Nebraska's fall practice is getting here quick, and this is the most talented Huskers team we've seen in over a decade. For that reason, there's going to be some positions up for grabs. So in today's video, I'm going to go over my top 5 Nebraska positional battles to watch out for throughout the Huskers camp, and we're going to talk about who's involved, who's going to win, and everything else in between. So really quick, before we dive into it, make sure to hit that like button. If you're starting to get fired up about the season, I know I am. And hey, if you're new here, please subscribe to the channel. I post a video about Nebraska football every single day, and it's all gas, no breaks. We're doing this all year long. So if you're a diehard fan of this program and you enjoy daily content talking about your favorite team, please hit that subscribe button. It would help me out greatly. But without further ado, let's get into it. Talking about Nebraska fall camp, specifically some positional battles to watch out for. And yep, it's that time of year again. The team starting to get back to Lincoln, back into the football mode. And a lot of these players are fighting for their spot on the depth chart. So with that being said, let's go to the number 1 positional battle that I'm looking out for. And this is the middle linebacker. So I've talked about them extensively this offseason. There's a lot of talent in that room. There's a lot of experience. There's just not a lot of top-end guys that you feel confident about enough to pencil them down. So let's talk about some of the players who are in this positional battle that I believe could start for Nebraska. Of course, Stefan Thompson's that first guy you have to mention, the transfer coming in from Syracuse, the most honestly developed and experienced linebacker on the team for Nebraska. You have John Bullock, the past walk-on who played a lot last year, was top 5 in tackles for the Huskers. You have Mekhi Gabayer, who really broke out for Nebraska, started a couple times last season. You have Vincent Shavers, the true freshman phenom that a lot of people are comparing to Levante David. And last but not least, you have Javin Wright, who was second in the teams in tackles last year, was really one of the more productive players in the secondary and in the linebacker core. So really those 5 guys could all start at middle linebacker for Nebraska. Of course, only 2 spots available in this 3-3-5, not including the jack position. So let's talk about who wins this battle for Nebraska. So first things first, Stefan Thompson got to Nebraska and he was not in a football shape. He was not the leader that Matt Rhule expected. But with that being said, he is, once again, the most experienced and developed linebacker on the team. He has the most stats next to his name. I believe he has a very high ceiling. And Stefan Thompson, I believe, will be the first starter. He's going to earn his spot throughout fall practice for Nebraska. So that's that first guy. And then it's a battle for that second spot. Again, John Bullock, Javin Wright, Vincent Shavers, Mekhi Gabayer. And I believe it will be Budo Wright. Javin Wright is going to win that second spot again. Production speaks volumes. He had 51 tackles last year for Nebraska. He's a guy who can play in the secondary. He could play rover. He can play linebacker. So again, just because of that positional flexibility, he's going to get his opportunities at linebacker. But again, Gabayer is going to be in the mix. He also plays jack for Nebraska. Of course, Vincent Shavers, will be in the mix. And John Bullock's one of those guys that probably won't start for Nebraska. He didn't start much last year, but when he is on the field, he makes a difference. So you feel good about that linebacker room. Honestly, any of those guys I just mentioned could win, but that is my prediction. Let's take it to the second positional battle, and this might be just as big, if not bigger, for Nebraska's success on defense. This is a battle for the second starting cornerback in the secondary. So, of course, we know that Ethan Nation, as of right now, is no longer with the team. Bly Hill is injured. He likely won't be suited up for the first 3 games for the Huskers. And there's a big question mark alongside Tommy Hill as a cornerback. So there's a couple guys who will be fighting for this spot. Zaire Wright, of course, the USC transfer. A lot of people are starting to pencil him down as that starter, but there's a lot of question marks by his name as well. Again, is he going to get back into football shape? He hasn't played football in about a year. Is he the guy that he was at USC? Can he figure out his stuff off the field? There's still a lot of issues around Zaire Wright. Again, we're going to have answers to that throughout fall camp. There's a guy like Dwight Boodle who's been climbing up the ranks. A lot of people have a lot of good stuff to say about him. Malcolm Hartzog's also in the mix. Yes, he moved to safety, but you've got to think if Nebraska's desperate enough at cornerback 2, they might move Hartzog back because they want to give one of their veterans on the field rather than putting him at safety. And then, of course, there's the true freshmen, Mario Buford, Larry Tarver, guys who I feel really good about in their future with Nebraska. just not necessarily throughout their true freshman campaign. So again, there's a lot of question marks. And then there's always Ethan Nation. Again, we do not know if Ethan Nation will be on the team for Nebraska. It's a very odd situation. People ask me about it all the time. Wilson, is Ethan Nation with the team or is he not? We don't know because Matt Rhule refuses to answer about it. The media refuses to ask him about it. You know, what I heard was that it was an academic issue. So we don't even know if Ethan Nation will be in the mix. So for that reason, I believe Sire Wright will win the cornerback 2 job just because of his experience. But honestly, again, if Ethan Nation comes back to the team or if Dwight Boodle can play as good as expected, I wouldn't be surprised if either of those guys start either or as well. Let's take it to the guard spot. Now, both left guard and right guard are up for grabs, and we have 4 guys fighting for it throughout fall camp. You have Justin Evans-Jenkins, a guy who is going into his 3rd year with Nebraska, graded as our 2nd best lineman last year. You have Micah Mazuka, transfer coming in from Florida. Henry Latufsky, a very good lineman for Nebraska, who's been a great depth piece and finally wants to start. And then we have Turner Corcoran, who's had some tough years with the Huskers, but we know how talented he is. So let's just start it off with Justin Evans-Jenkins. I believe he's going to start there at left guard. He's a guy who can play left guard, center. You feel great about his future with Nebraska. Really good in pass pro. Needs to develop a little bit in the running game, but again, has that NFL upside. He's from New Jersey. Matt Rhule loves him, and for that reason, he will start at left guard. Right guard is a huge, huge question, however. I've went back and forth. Is it going to be Henry Latufsky? Is it going to be Micah Mazuka? Will Turner Corcoran finally get back in that starting rotation? We haven't seen him start actively since 2022. It's going to be Henry Latufsky, if you ask me. Again, this is a guy who, when he gets on the field for Nebraska, he's graded out as one of the best linemen. He could do it both in pass pro and the running game. And yeah, I think Henry Latufsky will start at right guard, but you love Micah Mazuka as your bench guard, and then Turner Corcoran basically as your swing tackle who could play both left tackle, right tackle, and then go inside to guard as well. So really, that's that positional battle that I'm going to watch out for a lot, though. And honestly, anything could happen there. Okay, you feel good about, probably Stephon Thompson winning the linebacker job and then Sire Wright winning the corner job. Anything could happen here at guard. I wouldn't be surprised about anybody starting anywhere there. So yeah, that's something to watch out for. And let's just go to the special teams, because this is something that people always ask me about on my live streams. How are we feeling about the kicking situation? There is a real kicking battle this fall. Tristan Alvano is not penciled in to be the starter for the Huskers. And let's talk about the guys who are in the mix. Of course, you have Tristan Alvano going into his 2nd year, struggled last year to say the least for the Huskers. You have Nico Otto-Manelli coming in from the East Coast, true freshman. I believe he was a 4-star kicker coming out of high school. And then you have John Hull transferring in, who was a 5-star kicker coming out of the portal. So, again, a lot of guys who have stars next to their name, know how to get the ball through the uprights. It's just going to be a battle of, again, who can be most consistent. We know that Alvano has that leg strength that I don't think the other two can provide. We don't really care about that. We need that accuracy, and we need that high percentage from the field. So for that reason, I honestly think John Hull will win the job for Nebraska. That's a guy that I think a lot of fans need to know the name of sooner rather than later, but would not be surprised if Tristan Alvano won it as well. We know that, honestly, the only thing about Matt Rhule that's been a little bit frustrating, and I know a lot of fans agree with me on this, is that he refuses sometimes to have guys who previously started with him. He refuses to bench them. Of course, we saw that with their quarterback situation last year. So interesting to see there with the kickers, but I think John Hull will be that guy, and Matt Rhule will make him our new starter in the special teams unit. But let's go to the last positional battle to watch out for, and let's take it to the wide receiver room here. Well, I feel good about Jamal Banks being that number 1, and I feel good about Jalen Lloyd being that number 2. Wide receiver 3 is a huge battle for the Huskers. Of course, this will likely be at the wide receiver Z spot. So Jamal Banks will be your X-man. Lloyd will be in the slot. For that reason, at Z, there's a couple guys who could win this job. You have Isaiah Nair, transfer from Texas, hasn't really played football in 2 years, been out with injury. Malachi Coleman had a good year last year, not as good as Jalen Lloyd, but still very productive as a true freshman. You're hoping he can take that next jump. Ja'Cory Barney, the true freshman phenom, a lot of people feel good about him. And last but not least, the veterans, Alex Bullock, Isaiah Garcia-Castaneda. Now, those guys might not be the sexy pick, but they're going to get it done, and they've been productive in a Husker uniform. So What is my prediction? Who's going to be the last starter for the Huskers? They're at wide receiver. Now, I love Ja'Cory Barney, and I think he's not going to redshirt, but I don't believe he will start, at least not for the beginning of the season. I also think Bullock and Isaiah Garcia-Castaneda will be in the mix, but they won't start. So it goes down to Malachi Coleman or Isaiah Neyor. Now, I believe it will be Isaiah Neyor just based on what we've heard throughout spring practice, his performance in spring ball. It should be noted that Malachi Coleman did not play at all from the winter to the spring because he was out with injury. Again, Isaiah Neyor has that leg up against him already, and I believe he's going to take advantage, but Malachi Coleman will be that wide receiver 4. Neyor hopefully has a big year. He can go back to what he did throughout his Wyoming career. So those are my 5 positional battles to watch out for. I want to talk about one thing really quick that I know many get comments about. Wilson, where is the running back battle? Emmett Johnson is that guy. Listen, I would not be surprised if Gabe Ervin's also in the mix to get legit playing time. It's going to be probably Emmett Johnson, but Gabe Ervin will likely probably be in the mix for that running back by committee. But I don't believe it's a real running back battle. Emmett Johnson's going to take care of business. The way that Matt Rhule talks about him, the way that this offensive coaching staff talks about him, he's going to surprise a lot of people this year, and he's going to be one of Nebraska's best running backs in about this decade. So that's what I want to talk about in regards to the running back room. I feel good about Emmett Johnson, but Gabe Ervin also will get a share of carries. So, all right, that's my 5 positional battles to watch out for throughout Nebraska fall practice. Let me know. Do you disagree? Do you think somebody else will win the battle? Is there a battle that I didn't mention that you have your eyes on? And hey, if you made it this far in the video, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. And as always, folks, go Big Red, go Matt Rhule, and see you in the next one.